Incompetent people surround me wherever I go, and I wish it wasn't out of line to tell them so. The waiter never seems to get my order right. Seems like I got to complain almost every night. How much longer can I take this abuse? I try to be nice, but what's the use when I'm the only one that does anything right? Sometimes it seems like the world is run by chimpanzees, even though some of them might come with college degrees. It's getting hard to separate the facts from fiction, but I think I can say with obvious conviction that in this old world, everybody's wrong but me.
Welcome to Uncommon Sense. My name is Charlotte Laws, and today we're going to be discussing the current economic crisis, the most stressful cities in the U.S., why you might want to drink human breast milk instead of cow's milk, and other topics. But first, I'd like to introduce my esteemed panelists. We have Mr. Charles Parselle, who is an attorney and mediator, and who happens to be my husband. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And we have Mr. Bryce Devincenzi, who's a real estate agent and who has great interest in politics. And we work in the same office. And welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I thought we'd first just dive into the first topic, which has to do with, you've heard of the Human Genome Project, which has to do with, it's an international scientific project in which they look at 20 to 25,000 human genes and try to put it together into what is the human genome. Well, there's something new called the Personal Genome Project, which is a nonprofit organization, a private organization, has come forth and wants to put the DNA, decode people's DNA and put it all on the internet. And they're starting out with 10 individuals, and they eventually want to put all this information on the internet, like 100,000 people is their goal. But they say they need at least 10,000 to be able to get all the data they need in order to really kind of start figuring all of this out. And the people are going to have like their, their origins and their, the diseases that run in their family and the medications they take and the TV shows they like. I mean, it's going to be all sorts of information that's up there. And what do you think of this? I mean, would you be willing to? I actually sent in an email and said, I might want to do your project. So, I mean, they're very picky about who they'll take right now because they're nervous that some people could, there could be breaches of privacy as far as, like insurance companies might not want to insure you, or you might not get a job because of this information on the internet, or you're trying to go out on a date with someone and they may say, oh, you've got bad genes in your family, I don't want to go out with you. So they want people only that have like PhDs or master's degrees in the field of genetics, people that actually really understand what they might be getting themselves into. And so they have 10 people they've selected.
Well, can they tell what TV shows you watch from the Genome Project? That would be very revealing.
Perhaps that's part of the personal profile that somebody fills out.
Yeah, you fill it out.
Not a science-based result.
Oh, you fill that out.
Yeah, you give them information.
And then they tell you what genome that relates to.
Probably.
Well, no, I think there are predispositions towards certain moral beliefs, for example, that come from genetics. I believe that, and there's a lot of evidence to support that, like they do research studies of twins that are grown up apart in different families, and they have like similar beliefs on, moral beliefs, whereas their families may not agree in that way. So, yeah, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that that is the case. I mean, I'm very interested in that particular aspect.
Well, as for having concerns about insurance, that consideration could only apply in the United States, because all European countries, Canada, Australia, all have national, universal health care. So they don't need insurance. Well, they do need a little backup insurance, but that only buys you a better room, that kind of thing. As for privacy concerns, well, we have a great concern about privacy in our society, but on the other hand, huge numbers of people are just letting down the privacy mask altogether, putting everything on Facebook, MySpace, all that kind of thing. So I think there'll be more than enough volunteers who are not concerned about privacy. What do you think, Bryce?
Well, I think they definitely should be concerned to a certain extent with the privacy, just due to the fact that the Human Genome Project, if that information is out there, it opens up a whole new can of discrimination. Like if all of a sudden you find out, let's say you're predisposed to be a homosexual, but yet you don't feel that you're a homosexual, you've never dated a man, you've never had an interest in men, there is an opportunity for mistakes to be made with a lot of sciences, including with this. A perfect example is my mother years ago passed away. Before that, she had had a heart attack and she was given a prognosis of only 2 to 5 years to live. Well, she lived for 13 years after that. And that's just a testament to the human spirit fighting against, you know, what science says what will be. And then also in regards to the insurance in the United States is if somebody is predisposed to have cancer or diabetes or something, odds are they will be discriminated against. They will be denied coverage based strictly on that. And if they do get coverage, they're probably going to be paying an exorbitant amount as opposed to somebody whose genetic disposition is clear. So.
I mean, so you obviously wouldn't want to be on the website with all of your information listed.
I would not want to be on the website. I wouldn't want it publicly known. But if there was a private facility that says you are the only one who will ever see the results.
You can do that. It's $5,000 and you can have it decoded. You can have your DNA decoded now.
That is something I would be very interested in.
And the price will probably come down over time because it used to be like $1 million only a few years ago. It was very expensive and now it's already only down to $5,000.
Eventually you'll be able to go to Walmart or Walgreens and just get a blood test and they'll tell you right then and there. So.
I would never get my genome done.
At Walmart?
Not Walmart, no, I wouldn't mind.
Maybe at Costco, but not Walmart.
Yeah. I'm a Costco member, so, you know, the reason being that it seems to me that good news is less valued than bad news is feared. So that to the extent that that most of your genes are sound, you say, ho hum, I already knew that. But to the extent that you're fed bad news, you have a predisposition to whatever. It's going to, on certain people, including me, you're going to harp on it and it's going to worry you.
You're going to obsess over it.
I just don't want to know about that kind of thing.
Right. I think that's the type of thing that actually sent WebMD traffic into the stratosphere, is like people doing self-diagnosis and that type of thing.
Yeah.
And if you are given that information, it could be potentially damaging to you depending on how you take it.
Yeah.
However, if you are all of a sudden now you find out that maybe you should stay away from dairy because it will increase your chances for one disease or another, maybe that's a step that you could take so that you can prolong your life.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I would want to know too. But it'd be interesting to see this select group of people, how they react to this information once this happens. I mean, that's why they're doing this experiment, to find out the reaction.
But I think what you're talking about, you could avoid certain things or you could do certain things. Yeah, maybe in 50 years, maybe only in 25 years, but not at the start. I mean, medical science is quite good at giving you the bad news without telling you much about the cure.
Or any sort of upswing, too.
Yes.
Well, speaking of dairy, there is a push out there. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals is one of the groups pushing that we would start drinking human breast milk instead of cow milk. And they want Ben & Jerry's ice cream to be one of the instigators of this because they're a very environmentally sound organization and they're known for that. And there was even in Italy, which I think you're from Italy, there was somebody had a restaurant and they started using human breast milk, and the authorities came to them and said, well, it's not on the human species is not on the list of approved species for milk, even though they're not on the banned list, so they wouldn't let him continue. So would you drink human breast milk?
I absolutely would if I was a baby. In fact, I've just become a grandpa.
Oh, congratulations.
That's right.
Thank you, thank you. My granddaughter, I think, is 13 or 14 days old today. She is a devotee of breast milk. In fact, she doesn't seem to be able to get enough of it. The only thing that she seems to prefer is a nap. So I think human babies are designed for drinking milk and other humans are just not.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people are lactose intolerant. Yeah.
Yeah.
We still continue to drink milk into adulthood.
Obviously, tremendous problems of production and distribution.
I had this nightmare scenario of a bunch of women lined up in kind of like an Orwellian scenario, hooked up to breast milk machines, and it really unnerved me, to say the least. So.
And then there would be a tremendous amount of exploitation, and
absolutely,
the less fortunate, so to speak, would then be.
It would be a new way new occupation, new way to make a living.
Sure.
But there might be more babies too, because people would get pregnant more in order to be in the right condition to supply.
But after you've given birth, I mean, you can continue to breastfeed for several years after giving birth. That's why there are some women who still breastfeed today, and their child is 6 years old.
Oh, really? Oh, that's encouraging.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah, the treatment of cows is terrible, and that's why, obviously, I mean, cows are killed after 4 to 5 years, and the mother cows, when they have their babies, the little boy cows go off to be veal calves, and the little girl cows are taken away to be milking cows, and they're just ripped away from the mother, who then is seen, like, you know, oftentimes like crying and looking for her babies, and it's a really, and then after 4 or 5 years, she's ground up into hamburger meat. So it's a really bad situation, and they don't have a lot of space and a lot of ability.
You're not suggesting that would happen to a human.
Anything's possible.
No. I think in some ways that, you know, in third world countries there are a lot of terrible jobs that people do. I think being a milk producer might be better.
Well, we have a Prop 2 on the ballot for California, and that's which I encourage people to support, which creates more space, at least for chickens and pigs and veal calves. So it's at least so they can stand up and move around, which right now in the factory farms, you know, they can't even move. They spend their entire life oftentimes in darkness in a cage crammed in with a whole bunch of other chickens, and they can't even, you know, have any space. So I'm hoping that passes, and that will kind of start a trend in the country. Absolutely.
I mean, there's a lot of other countries that actually produce meat locally, you know, goat meat and beef as well. But a lot of other countries have a little bit more respect for the animal, in the essence that, you know, certain religious beliefs, they feel the animal has a spirit, and in order for the meat to nurture their bodies, it has to come from a cow or another sort of animal that's been treated humanely and actually given respect, as opposed to something just to be consumed and thrown away.
Right.
So I think by giving these animals the respect of giving a bigger pen or whatnot, that the meat would probably be better for us.
No,
as well.
I know. That's one of the arguments, is that it'll be healthier, and they're like diseases that spread because the animals are so crammed together. And yeah, exactly. So it'll be better for humans also as far as consumption.
I'm not completely selfish, though. I'm all for the humane treatment of animals. So.
Okay. I'm for everybody being vegetarian eventually, but I'm willing to take tiny steps in that.
Well, I like the thought that if I could go to a grocery store and buy some beef or something, that I could buy it with a clear conscience without researching where the meat has come from, what sort of farm, what commercial farm it's come from, and how the animals have been treated. Which is why I buy a lot of stuff from
Whole Foods
or Trader Joe's or whatever, and I go there, and a lot of times it actually says on the back, humanely treated animals, etc. I would like if there was a law that ensured that.
Well, the next topic is the economy and the economic crisis. And there was a story which was kind of interesting out of Milpitas, California, a house that went into foreclosure. And apparently the family had bought the house in 1962. So the reason why it would be in foreclosure, obviously they must have borrowed greatly off of that house, because one would think the mortgage would be paid off by this time. But apparently when it went into foreclosure, the boyfriend of the girl that was living there got so angry, and he was living there, that he actually literally tore it to pieces and put graffiti everywhere, and just totally disgusting, garbage everywhere in the front yard and in the house. And the authorities had to come in and try to clean up the yard, and it's, you know, and now they're billing the bank for the cleanup. And so do you have sympathy for this this family, or what do you think about the people that are going into foreclosure?
Well, what I think about vandalism is that it's vandalism no matter what the circumstances. So it doesn't relate to having sympathy for people who are losing their houses. I mean, lots of people are losing their houses right now, for whom one can feel a great deal of sympathy, and one can feel some sympathy for in the particular case, but not someone who just trashes wantonly. We don't tolerate that.
Well, they are thinking about bringing vandalism charges against this man. I think they should too. I totally agree. And to me, it's just so arrogant and so I mean, I just think it's horrible that someone would do this when a bank was, to me, generous enough to give you a loan. You know, whether it's a loan that you're pulling cash out of a house or it's an original loan in purchasing the house. You know, when I buy a property, to me, I feel very grateful that the bank is trusting me to pay that money back. And to just kind of, you know, feel that you don't have any responsibility after you've signed that paperwork saying that you've agreed to pay the money back. Right. I mean, to me, I just can't understand the mindset of somebody who would be angry about being in foreclosure. I mean, really anybody that's angry about it, unless they were, you know, the victim of fraud, and they were, you know, literally, you know, blatant fraud by a mortgage broker or someone who, you know, or a bank that said the rate is this and it's not really that. But if you sign paperwork, I think you have a responsibility to say, you know, I signed that paperwork and I'm supposed to pay this back, and I shouldn't be angry about being in foreclosure. You
definitely should have the responsibility to understand what you are signing. And if there's anything that needs clarification, it is then up to you to say, what does this mean? What will happen a year from now, et cetera? Will my rate go up? And ask the necessary questions to prevent an undesired situation like being pre-foreclosure or being foreclosed on. But as far as this guy goes, yeah, vandalism was just wrong. It's no longer his property, and he should be prosecuted. Something that I thought was interesting is it was owned by Deutsche Bank, I believe. And I don't know if the guy did this on purpose and misspelled it on purpose, because on the writing on the window it said this property has been foreclosed by Douche Bank, as opposed to by Deutsche Bank.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that.
So I don't know if it was on purpose or if he was trying to insinuate something about the bank.
It was probably on purpose, probably. I would assume.
Oh, yeah.
So, well, whose fault do you think this economic crisis is? Do you think it's the government officials? Do you think it's the Wall Street, like many people like to say, or do you think it's, you know, those on Main Street who have gotten in over their heads and have agreed to pay back loans, but who are, you know, in foreclosure now? I
think you've got blame to go from the bottom up, all the way to the top, and then politically on both sides of the aisle as well.
Right.
So you've got the homeowner signing into a loan that they have no business that they should be signing into. You have the predatory lender who's getting them into a subprime loan that's totally going to change.
But
in
how do
6
you know
months
that
to
they're
a year.
a predatory lender? I mean, see, that's, to me, I don't think that most of these are predatory loans. I don't think these are mostly subprime loans. I think these are people that started out with just an adjustable interest rate, and you know, they thought the market was going to continue to increase, and it didn't, and they got caught where they couldn't refinance or they couldn't sell, you know, with a profit. And
well,
I think a lot of them are even investors. I don't even think there are necessarily that many people that are just ordinary first-time home buyers. I think there are a lot of people that are.
Oh, absolutely.
You know.
Well, I think we could also agree that in our industry and in the mortgage industry, there is a certain degree of people who are unethical, and that some of these lenders are going to be predatory lenders, and others are going to be completely ethical, and they're not going to try and trap, and they're going to disclose everything. But I think when people saw the boom and how easy it is to get credit and how easy it is to get a loan and everything, a lot of people saw an opportunity to make a lot of money. And then they jumped on the bandwagon, and those are probably the people who are the predatory lenders. I'm not so worried about the people who have been doing loans for 10, 15 years without a smirch on their record whatsoever.
I mean, what I understand is the government had, do you have something to say?
Yes. Do you want to partake?
No, I understand.
Are you having fun listening?
No, I have a wife who always interrupts. But no, I mean nothing by that, my dear. You always blame the people at the bottom first.
No, that's not true.
They get 90% of the blame, and then a little blame is allowed to trickle up.
That's so
I have
not
exactly
true.
the reverse view. I think the boom is a clear result of government policies coming from the very top, and the responsibility lies mostly at the top, at the level of government, and then it goes, because government says, we really want you to do this. This is a matter of policy, home ownership.
Exactly.
Relax the standards. And the banks at some point say, well, at the beginning of the banks say, well, we don't want to take the risk. And government says, we'll backstop the risk. It's called Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Don't worry about it. And everyone sells on the mortgages then to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and that's why, you know, all this trouble has ensued. And the people down the bottom are the beneficiaries of this policy. They're told, yeah, we can get you in. True, no one can, and you say, well, they didn't predict the future. I say, no one can predict the future. They saw an opportunity, they took it with the blessing of the government, and as a result of what everyone is calling a perfect storm, a lot of them have now been caught out, I don't blame them. And this theory, oh, they should know. They should be able to predict 2 or 3 years down the line whether they're going to be able to keep up the mortgage. I think that's complete nonsense.
Well, I think that a lot of people did get in who really didn't have a lot of hope of being able to keep up with it. But I think the government's definitely at fault, because what I understand is that the policies were put in place, and I think it's a noble to want to get more people, you know, to have increased home ownership, which I think we're like at 67%. And I think, you know, you want to have more people owning property. I mean, I think that's a good thing.
That's a good intention.
However, it's a good intention, but Congress is the one who put this kind of, you know, made a situation where I believe the banks were, the Wall Street, you know, the banks, the lenders were being penalized if they didn't comply with, you know, providing this kind of assistance for kind of low income through the CRA, that kind of thing. So therefore, I agree that it's at the top, but I also think it's also at the bottom. And I think that this anger towards banks is actually a little bit misplaced. And that's kind of the people in the middle, I don't feel are as responsible as everyone else seems to think they are. That's just what I think.
Well, when we're talking about government's involvement and their part in this, when you look back to 1999, when I think it's Graham-Bleach-Liley Act of 1999, which completely got rid of the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933, where you actually had strict regulation with holding banks, investment banks, insurance companies, all this other stuff. And the 1990 Act by Graham, Bleach, and Liley just completely eradicated that. So then what happened is you had all these loans being bundled up and gambled upon on Wall Street.
Right.
So that caused a lot of speculation. That caused a lot of deregulation, so the lines were blurred.
Right. There were people, though, that came forward and wanted regulation, and even the Bush administration came forward a couple of times and said, we want regulation. I know John McCain even co-sponsored legislation for some sort of regulation of Fannie Mae, but it didn't pass. So
I hope we're not going to turn this into a
We're not, but we will be talking about politics later.
Well, that 1990 Act, the Graham-Bleach-Liley, Phil Graham is John McCain's one of his was one of his big
not anymore.
advisors.
But you know,
that's true.
It is clear that the institutions stood to make a great deal of money, and those who didn't get caught out at the end did make a great deal of money. Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, you know, Morgan Stanley, they've substantially gone under. And if you're a borrower, if you're at the bottom and you have an opportunity to get into a house, there are only 2 ways you can get into a house. One, with money down. If you put money down and things changed and you lost it through foreclosure, you lost your money. You know, to call those people who are responsible and that they're to blame, I think is grossly unfair.
Well, you know
excuse me. Then the one other type of person is the person who was offered the opportunity to get into a house for no money down. Well, they have nothing to lose. Where's the irresponsibility on their side? None. The irresponsibility is with the bank, the lender, who says, "Oh, don't worry, you know, we'll lend you the money. You don't have to put a penny down." So, any change in circumstances, the bank is bound to be the loser. They much more sophisticated people, undertook that risk, and to the great damage of the country, have lost out.
Well, the banks are being criticized as being greedy, as if greedy is some kind of illegal act or something. Actually, greed is part of capitalism, and being greedy is helping your stockholders.
Well, being smart is also part of capitalism.
I understand, but if they're
being
told by the politicians
to
do one thing, and then, you know, the politicians say, we want you to relax your standards, and they say, okay, and we'll make more money. Why not? And we'll help our stockholders. Why not? Why do they get all the blame? That's all I'm saying.
No, excuse me. You are on my side, because I started off.
I would never be on your side.
I started off by saying, and sorry, Bryce.
Oh, no problem.
I just want one last thing to nail her coffin.
You never do that.
She said, you know, the fault lies at the bottom. I said, no, it lies at the top.
No, I said the top and the bottom, but not as much in the middle.
Not in the middle.
And everybody says it's the middle's fault. That's all I'm saying, is that they're all wrong.
Everybody. Am I everybody?
No, but the media is pushing.
Bryce. No problem. Go for it.
The greedy, you know, Wall Street. That's all I hear about when I turn on the television.
And you're right in saying that greed is part of capitalism, and the bailout is part of socialism.
So now that we're stressed out, I'm going to go on to the next topic, but we might come back to this.
Excuse me, greed is one of the 7 deadly sins. To say that it... Yes, it is.
Who made those up? Who made those up?
Everybody knows the 7 deadly sins. To say that it's all about greed is grossly to malign capitalism. Capitalism is not about greed.
You have a duty if you're a corporation to make as much money for your stockholders as possible. You could definitely argue that that is their ethical duty to make as much money as possible. That's their one, that's the one rule they need to follow. I mean, you could argue that.
Oh yeah, well,
you could if you didn't have to move on to the next topic immediately.
All right, let's do that.
So now that we're stressed, I was going to ask you, what do you think are the most stressful cities? And I just thought I would ask you a couple. This is just a light little thing, but I thought I have 5 here. And there was a study done, and they looked at housing affordability, they looked at quality of life, environment, jobs, and...
All right, you go first, Bryce.
I think New York would definitely, I would think that it would rank pretty high up on
Number
there.
two.
I say Helena, Montana.
Ah, you're wrong.
Go on.
And then I would say probably Los Angeles.
Yes. Number 4.
Okay.
Good job.
I say Boise, Idaho.
Wrong.
Wow, New York's number 1 would be Washington, D.C.?
No, Chicago's number 1, then New York, Detroit, Los Angeles, San Francisco.
What about Kansas City, Kansas?
No, that's not on there, but there's also the least stressful.
Is Wasilla on there anywhere?
And Wasilla, I think Wasilla is very stressful, frankly. Palin is very stressful to me, I'll say that. But none of, let's see, what do you think is on the least stressful? Some of them are big cities, some of them are not as big, but Helena, Montana is not on the list.
Oh, an unstressful city?
Yes.
Atlantis.
Atlantis? Under the sea?
Valhalla, Shangri-La. So.
Norfolk, Virginia. Salt Lake City is number 2. Phoenix, Oklahoma City, Austin, Texas, Las Vegas, Denver, San Diego,
Las Vegas.
Jacksonville, and then Providence, Rhode Island.
I've heard wonderful things about Fort Collins, Colorado as well.
Okay, I've never even heard of it. But to me, small towns are more stressful because I'm one of these type A people. And when I go like on a vacation to a place that's relaxed, I feel more stressed because I feel like I need to be doing something.
You got to do something. Right.
But I guess we're going to have to go, so we'll have to finish the topics another day. And thank you both for joining me. And I hope we brought some uncommon sense into your life. As you putter through your day, remember, everybody's wrong but me. And him, and him. See you next time.
Well then, there we are. So now the credits are going to roll.
Sometimes it seems like the world is run by chimpanzees, even though some of them might come with college degrees. It's getting hard to separate the facts from fiction, but I think I can say with obvious conviction that in this old world, everybody's wrong but me. Everybody's wrong to disagree with me. That really chaps my eye. I thought it all through so very carefully. There's no point even considering the other side. Still